Financial and legal support, as well as adequate self-care, are critical for family caregivers, but a lot of people don't know where or how to access these services. Here now to talk about practical help for caregivers are Vincent Tilford. He is the executive director at the Hannan Center, wealth advisor André Watson of the Watson Financial Group, and Jason Lachowski, who is associate state director of government affairs at AARP of Michigan. Thanks for being here, all three of you. Vincent, talk about the respite services that are offered at Hannan Center for family caregivers. Why is that so important to care for yourself?
Well, thanks, Stephen, for having me on. First of all, I'll say that Hannan turns 100 years old this year, and we've been serving the needs of older adults for this entire period, but we really didn't start services for caregivers until about 5 years ago during the middle of the pandemic. And one of the things that we discovered when we were creating this program was that there wasn't enough adult day programs for people who are living with a dementia diagnosis, and one that also equally supports those caregivers. And so while we provide this sort of nurturing and sort of evidence-based programming to people who have a dementia diagnosis, we spend an equal amount of time, if not more, with those caregivers. You know, your earlier guests talked about sometimes how caregivers have to take care of themselves. Well, we really try to help them with that by taking on some of the tasks that they have to do throughout the day and doing those for them. We provide quarterly caregiving days, or I should say spa days, where caregivers can come and get pampered while we watch their family members in our program. We help caregivers navigate resources. We provide counseling, and we help to place them when their loved one is no longer appropriate for our program. We stay with them and we help them to find other care that better fits those needs. So we are just a program that is oversubscribed. We serve about 80 to 90 caregivers and those living with dementia on an annual basis.
Yeah, you know, it seems to me that the first step, Vincent, is realizing that you need the help, and that's a huge hurdle for a lot of people. I think for a lot of us, we end up in these circumstances where we're caring for somebody, and all we're thinking about is, well, I've got to do this. I've got to make sure that this works for this other person. How do we get people to know, okay, well, I need care too, if I'm in this situation?
Yeah, that's a really important idea that you brought up there, because oftentimes it's hard to get people to think about caregiving before they're in that situation. And then once they're in it, they don't have time to think, they just act. And so what we try to do is to provide education and support to those caregivers. We try to help them to think about those things that they may not have encountered yet. For example, one of the things we'll do is we'll bring an occupational therapist into their home to help them think about, how should your home be structured? What kinds of things should you put in place? If you have someone with dementia and they're up in the middle of the night, sunsetting, walking around, you don't want them to leave, but you want them to be safe. And you also need to be safe as well. So what we try to do is to anticipate a lot of those things. All of our staff are trained to serve people who have dementia diagnosis. And we also use a lot of evidence-based programming to try to introduce new techniques that they can use with their loved ones.
Yeah. André, you provide financial advice for our aging population as well as for the family members who care for them. That's key as well. Talk about what we do. I mean, almost no one prepares for this kind of stage in their life, especially caregivers. What are the things people need to kind of keep their eyes open about?
Great seeing you again, Stephen. The one thing is just an awareness that I really applaud Dr. Hubbard for alerting and trying to create a proactive position from a trusted component of our community, the churches, because it gives me a better chance to do what I have to do, which is bring the resources necessary to pull off the care. or the ingenuity and creativity that's necessary. An example would be, what type of home should mom or dad own? What should we do with the inevitable situations that may occur? Do we engage products such as long-term care?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have frank conversations with family members about how they can support that loved one that's in need?
And when we think about the money side of it, I mean, is there a way to prepare for this? I mean, are there decisions that we ought to be making in our 40s and 50s to care for our parents first when they're in their 70s and 80s, but then also to make sure that we can be cared for when we reach that age?
Yeah, and actually you highlight the bottleneck dilemma that I commonly confront. Do you provide all of the resources to take care of the parent? And is there a compromise in the inheritance? What role does this care take economically? You know, can you stop your job? All of these situations are unfortunately realities that we have to figure out a plan and work accordingly. Another thing, Stephen, that you mentioned is very, very critical. We have to learn and evolve. So if we watch the care that we're providing for our parents, it is critical that we learn from the revelation that we may experience and learn, I guess, with the element of commitment. You know, what can I do better that allows me to experience my fourth quarter or those twilight years at a better situation? You know, and sometimes that's mental, sometimes that's physical, but it is critical that we learn. And unfortunately, due to the disproportionate amount of experiences with wealth in America, the African American community is really going through a crisis in this critical time, where some of the gains that we may have experienced could be lost or wiped out completely. So it's a very challenging bottleneck that I am witnessing, because I'm the individual who's in the room, we make the decisions, or I may see some of my clients who are not living their best lives, which again is why I applaud the vision that Dr. Hubbard is giving back to the community, because this is something we have to stay ahead of if we hope to at least give decency. And I pray that our community, not just community, but our country comes to realize and own this emergency.
Yeah.
It's not to be pushed along. We are at crisis mode.
Yeah. I mean, the preparedness is not there now.
Right.
I mean, I guess the best hope is that we can start to be prepared for, the next generation in a better way that we were for this one.
Right.
Jason, talk about the tax and financial relief efforts that AARP is pushing for caregivers here in Michigan and at the national level.
Well, thank you for having me, Stephen. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering Americans 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. And one of the ways we do that is through our advocacy work. And one of our top priorities is providing financial relief to family caregivers. We do that at both the federal level, Credit for Caring, which was mentioned in the video, but AARP Michigan is also working to advance a state tax credit as well. This is a major issue for older adults. At any given time during the year, there's an estimated 1.73 million Michiganders who serve as a caregiver for an older adult, allowing them to live independently at home where they want to be. Caregivers are the single largest provider of long-term care for adults living at home, and they're the first line of defense for older adults from being readmitted to a hospital or being forced to move into a nursing home. At AARP Michigan, we're very optimistic about the prospects of a credit. The legislature is currently in its appropriations process, and the Senate has included a $30 million line item to start the credit. We've been advocating to the Michigan House, and we hope to introduce the credit formally here in the coming months.
Yeah. I mean, that credit would make a big difference, obviously. Are there other things that we need from a a policy perspective to kind of change the financial picture for the caregiving environment beyond tax credits?
You know, that's a great question. And one of the things that I always point to is the funding that the states provide to the area agencies on aging for home and community-based services. These are services that are provided through those area agencies. They allow older adults to stay in their homes, which is where they want to be. And the services are more cost effective than being at a nursing home. So from the state's perspective, it should be a win-win. But of course, we need to make sure that that's balanced and we drive more funding to that mechanism as opposed to just increasing funding for nursing homes.
Yeah. Okay, Vincent, André, and Jason, great advice from all three of you. Thanks so much for being here with us.